Good evening, Jeopardy fans, and we are finally live here on hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel, presented by thejeopardyfan.com. Once again, and as always, I am Andy Saunders, and I will be moderating tonight's panel. As you can see by the bottom of our panel, it's just a one-on-one interview tonight. I'm here with Wilbur Farley. Thanks for joining us, Wilbur.
Hello, Andy. Thanks for having me.
And unfortunately, I did say Lisa was probably going to be joining us, Lisa Kristina, but unfortunately, she's having some technical issues. I'll try to get her on in the near future, but as for tonight, it is just a one-on-one interview, and I'm sure it'll be good because certainly Wilbur was one of the one of the most talked about games of the last of the entire season. Actually, I'd say
it was surprisingly controversial. Surprising.
Surprising. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But first of all, I guess I might as well start at the front. So my first question for you, Wilbur, how did you become a Jeopardy fan in the first place? Because I think most contestants kind of have that origin story as to sort of how they got into the show and, kind of became interested in trying out and being a contestant.
Wow. I think my origin story goes all the way back to the 70s, actually. My older brothers had the play-at-home game that had the nice still clickers that you could... Yeah, and I started with that. Well, not playing it, mind you. I broke theirs because I was still too young. So it wasn't until the show came back on again in the 80s that, I was old enough. I started watching after school, and... I love trivia, so it just seemed like a natural fit. That's where it started for me. And just this past summer, my housemate said, you should take the online test. And I said, yeah, why not? So that's how I got there.
Oh, very nice. And so you tried out, so your tryout was whereabouts then?
Let's see. I tried out on June 1st. My audition was July 9th in the city. And I'm sorry, I'm in New York, so it was
okay. Okay, so then you got the call pretty quickly, pretty shortly thereafter then.
Yeah, before the end of July. So my audition was July 9th, and within 2 weeks, Lori was calling me. So.
Oh, wow. That's actually a very, very quick turnaround for sure.
Yeah, it surprised me. I know when we were going to the taping in the van, we were all kind of going around telling our stories, and one person actually didn't think they were going to call. It was 2.5 years from his audition. As a matter of fact, it was Eric who was the champion my week. And he was like, yeah, I figured, well, I'll just audition again. They're not going to call. So then it came to me in the van, and I said, I auditioned in July. And everybody just kind of snapped their heads around and looked at me. And I was like, sorry. So that was a little moment of just, wow, I got here really fast. And because practically everyone else in the van had, a year and a half, and it's 6 weeks. So.
Yeah, that's an unusual, that's quite as you figured out, that is quite a quick turnaround for sure. Yeah. So once you got to the studio, how did you find the, the buzzer, the rehearsal time on the buzzer, as it were, because I know you certainly, it seemed like you struggled a bit on the signaling device over the first 30 clues, as it were.
You know what? Actually, it wasn't so much the signaling device as I was just a deer in the headlights when the game started. I mean, I'm up there. There were several times I thought I knew the answer, but I wasn't going to buzz in. And then the 1 or 2 times I did know it, Eric and Kiana were just faster than I was on the buzzer. During rehearsal, though, I could not figure it out. In fact, finally, Maggie Speak, the producer who's in charge of contestants, came over, and she kept me up there during the rehearsal. And she finally walked over to me and said, "What are you doing? Are you watching the lights? Are you listening to the voice?" And I said, "I don't know." She said, "Well, stop it and do the other thing." And that's kind of just how she said it. I laughed a little bit, and it got easier for me. But the buzzer, getting used to that, to ringing in, it does take it takes longer than I would have liked for it to take, especially since I play video games. I thought I was going to have it a lot faster, but it's a difficult thing.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, it's certainly a very fickle thing for sure. And it's, you can get it, you can not have it, then you can get it, and then you can almost lose it quite just as quickly. And
Yep.
I mean, there was certainly a run in, midway through Double Jeopardy, you managed to actually pick it up quite well and
Yeah,
get yourself back in the game.
yeah, I don't know what happened during that run. It's I also felt the same way during the audition. I just got into a groove where everything was seeming to come in perfect time to me, and it really makes the game fun when it just seems to click like that, and it really did during the Double Jeopardy round.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you probably didn't. You obviously didn't have too much of a chance to control the board in the Jeopardy round, but did you have an idea that, being that 2020 category came at the end, that it might eat into the time in Double Jeopardy at all, or?
Honestly, it didn't even occur to me that something like that could happen. So I was almost completely oblivious to the board the day of taping. Watching it on television, I was like, I don't remember any of these categories. What's going on here? Is this my show? So it was. And I also remember sitting at home going, God, I hate all of these categories, but I don't remember feeling that way in the studio the day of the taping. So it was just a bizarre time management, and just not really being aware of where I was, besides I'm playing the game. So.
Mm-hmm. And as it turns out, one of our people listening into the interview, Alyssa Flagg, mentioned basically that, and I believe her full quote is, "I hear you, Wilbur. I was a deer in the headlights as an audience member for a taping." So she can certainly get how that feels, when you're up there as an actual contestant. Now, I get, it might be difficult to actually answer this question, actually, as you've mentioned, being a deer in the headlights, but do you think there might have been any sort of, Slumdog Millionaire moments, as it were, where you had some fun story behind how you happen to know the answer to any of the questions you got?
If anything, I would go the exact opposite. I would go with the first question that I missed, which was in the city haiku category.
Yeah.
Geography is by far, when I was prepping for the show, people would leave maps for me to look at, just because I'm horrible at geography. I mean, basic big things I know, little things not so much. And when I saw that category and they started doing it, I'm like, oh boy, geography, oh boy. And finally the Boise clue came up, and I'm like, I rung in and I'm like, yay, not only did I finally get to ring in, I'm going to get a geography question right. And of course, what comes out of my mouth instead of Boise? I say Idaho. And when Alex said, oh, we wanted this, and I just went, oh boy, it's going to be a long day. So that kind of compounded my deer in the headlights, because here I was, I thought I had gotten off, I thought I'd finally gotten off the zero. And it backfired on me. So mine is actually a story that goes the other way.
And I think, to be honest with you, that is something that can certainly happen, not just to you, but has certainly happened to many players, and has certainly, and I would almost say that good on you for being able to recover from that, especially in the Double Jeopardy round, for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I don't remember if during the commercial break Maggie said something to me again, or if just having the commercial break I was able to regather and go, okay, that was really stupid. You gotta get past it. But it might have been Maggie. She was just completely awesome And if anybody is there trying to make you forget that you're playing a game and that people are watching you and it's going to be on television, it's Maggie. She kept the day a lot of fun. So
that does not surprise me in the slightest to hear that. I have had the good fortune of meeting Maggie a couple of times personally at auditions. In fact, I met she was in charge of my audition a couple of weeks ago. So
yep.
I can absolutely see why you would say that for sure.
Oh,
so.
And from the audition on, it was just like, okay, this is going to be a fun day. And sure enough, Maggie's the ringleader, but between Lori and Karina, all of them just made it such a fun day.
Mm-hmm. So did Alex, in your interview, halfway through the Jeopardy round, did Alex talk with you about what you thought he'd talk about?
Nope. And at this point, I don't even remember which one we had kind of the three, we had kind of sort of agreed in the green room that he would ask about, but it definitely wasn't it. So once again, the minute he said Hamlet, I had to kind of readjust myself because it definitely wasn't what I was expecting. So, yeah, it threw me for just about half a second, and I kind of cocked my head. It's funny watching myself on television. I kind of cocked my head and go, oh, right, Hamlet. So
yeah, I guess Alex, being a bit of a classic movie aficionado, that's probably why he decided to go in that direction.
Yeah, which, I'm glad I gave him the right answer on Kenneth Branagh too, so that worked out nicely.
Yeah, that's always good when you and Alex kind of agree on something, and that way he doesn't get to feign offense,
the disdain.
Yes,
really,
So do you remember, well, actually, before I ask this question, did it help getting to watch a game in the audience before you actually got called up to tape?
It did, and it did more than not. Because I watched the first day where Kara and Eric went at it, and I saw Eric with the big payday. He doubled his money in Final Jeopardy, and I remember sitting in the audience thinking to myself, ooh, I hope I don't have to play Eric. And sure enough, my number gets picked next, and I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna make it to lunch. So it definitely puts you at ease, because as you're sitting in the audience, you kind of mutter the answers to yourself, the questions to yourself, and it's not bad. Yeah, I would rather be in the studio audience watching than waiting in the green room or something like that, where you're kind of blind to everything. So I think it helped. Yeah,
that's certainly a good thing, for sure. And you're again definitely not alone. I think a lot of people feel overwhelmed actually getting thrown in right away without having to see an episode, from what I've seen from talking to some of the Monday players. So in the main game, were there any times where they had to stop tape and confer about anything?
Actually, right before I missed the daily double in Double Jeopardy, we stopped tape because they went Kiana's instated answer in the Insta category. The judges reviewed that and they gave her credit for her daily double. So we paused there. We stepped away from the podiums. We faced the back wall. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that was the only time we stopped during the actual gameplay.
And that makes sense. No, I wasn't when I was, it was, did she seem surprised that they'd ruled her incorrect originally, or more surprised that they went back and said, yes, she was okay?
Honestly, I don't remember. I don't remember if I looked over at her when they didn't give it to her. that part's a blur, and I didn't really pick up anything watching it again on television. I'll tell you, I was amazed that they hadn't given it to her. As she was answering the Daily Double, it's like, you know, and because I knew it was installed, and once again, it's one of those things where you're standing there and it's not your clue. I knew I would have said install, but I'm like, but I could see in state being right, but you kind of get it out of your head and get back to the gameplay. And then when they stopped it, I certainly wasn't surprised myself that they gave it to her because I could see it.
Yeah, and you know, coming through a little bit later, I mean, I can certainly see why they elected to give it to her eventually as well.
Yep.
So on that Daily Double you faced, it you know, I saw a few people point out that just, you know, the irony of somebody named Wilbur missing a question about the Wright brothers.
The Wright brothers. Yep. I completely blanked. If I had thought a little bit more about it, well, no, I'm not even gonna say that one. There was no way I was gonna guess the Wright brothers on that one. I kept looking at the date. It was, for me, that what was that, a biography category? It was just not a fun category. Once again, another one of my weak spots. I don't read a lot of biography, so yeah, that date just did not click at all, you know, for me. So yeah, that is really ironic that I missed the Wright brothers.
So, I guess now it's probably a good time to ask about what everyone else is kind of being like. Why didn't you lead off with this, Andy? But certainly the thing that's gotten everyone talking, your Final Jeopardy, and obviously, I guess my first question for you there is: at what point did you realize what the answer might be, and at what point did you start writing?
It's so difficult for me to know the exact time. It probably took me 10 or 12 seconds just because I read the clue too quickly and I got sent down a bad path. I'm standing there. I knew I'd read a news article a couple of weeks before the taping about an album that had re-entered the charts after decades not in it. And I couldn't remember what album was talked about in the news article that I had read. So I'm standing there thinking to myself, I absolutely positively don't know it. And I probably spent 10 or 11, maybe 12 seconds thinking that. Then I reread the clue, focused on the 50 years and said, wait, it can only be one thing. And I started writing. And time just got away from me. I remember getting down to hearts, and I remember writing on the screen CL for club, only it either had already cut out or it didn't show up. I don't know what happened, but you know, and that's as far as I got. I never once thought about just writing Sergeant Pepper's though, because of the prep we do backstage. You know, and having it drilled into us how exacting the judges are in Final Jeopardy. So I knew it had to be the whole thing. So once I, you know, did the math, 1967 Sergeant Pepper's is the only thing it can be. I started writing.
And now, was there a stoppage at that point while they considered your answer, or did they?
No, they already had it. So even as Alex was looking, I don't know, I noticed it as I watched it again on television. I saw the producer, I saw the showrunner coming in from my left. So I looked to my left and he's below camera giving Alex the wave off, even if Alex is still reading it. So I knew even before Alex could say anything what the ruling was. So.
Now, you're from, you know, with your perspective on things and how long it you know, and the fact you were ultimately not able to finish writing your response down. Do you think there should be a length limit in Final Jeopardy in terms of what the expectation is for contestants to write down? Now, I understand you may have a slightly biased opinion on this matter, but I'm kind of curious just to see what some of the people watching may think as well of this. But do you think that there should be a length limit in Final Jeopardy?
You know, I honestly don't know how I feel about it. Kiana was able to finish the whole thing in the time given. I would have been able to finish if I hadn't spent the first 10 seconds trying to remember something that was irrelevant. You know, I know the Lord of the Rings Return of the King, that was a long one, and that, you know, caused all types of havoc. I honestly don't have a good answer to the question. I've read a lot of different arguments. You know, it goes from being a game of what you know to a game of skill with the stylus when you have long answers like that. I'm genuinely unable to answer it.
Okay.
If I had had 5 more seconds, I would have finished. So I don't think it was the clue. It was how long it took me to get out of my head and start writing. So that's the best answer I can give.
Okay. And, you know, my own personally, I think that the writers may well take that into account when they're writing a clue. You know, they may expect it to be more difficult because there's a lot of writing that has to be done.
Yeah, maybe. Because for me, thinking back on it, the clue, the Final Jeopardy clue, when I can look at it, not under the lights, not at the podium, it was so, if I had read it slower that day, I wouldn't have gotten sidetracked on a wrong scent. And once again, I would have finished. So that was one of those clues that wasn't all that difficult. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about having to write out all the Sergeant Peppers. Return of the King, Lord of the Rings. The clue was not all that difficult. Yeah, it's one of those things you kind of kick yourself over because that was my moment. Classic albums, you know.
Now, were you surprised by the amount of support you got after the fact from people who thought you should have won?
I was. The one thing I dreaded from August until November was, you know, people watching it and going, "Oh, look at how did you?" It's like, but you know, and it's carrying around that anxiety, that angst about missing something that, you know, I went back to the hotel room and put on Sergeant Pepper's just to get the taste out of my mouth. It's an album I grew up with, so it was just one of those things. But then to see oh, you were robbed, and you know, in back of my head saying, I wasn't really robbed. I mean, you know, that kind of thing. But it was gratifying to see both people I know and people I didn't know, you know, who said, "Good game, Wilbur, tough break." And, you know, to see this kind of conversation come about, you know, about the stylus, about Final Jeopardy, about the length of responses, that was kind of interesting and gratifying to know that, yeah, to know that people weren't saying, "Oh, what a moron for missing that one," which is, you know, you're always afraid of that. So.
And I mean, that certainly came up this past week with a lot of video game writers seemingly aghast that only one contestant out of 3 got a question about Pokemon this past week. So.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, having been on that side of the camera, I have a lot more respect for the players than I probably ever did before. I mean, I know sitting at home, you're yelling at the screen, come on, my 3-year-old daughter knew that one, you know, that kind of thing, but not so much anymore. I mean, there's that mind, that brain hand interface. Sometimes you hit that buzzer, you ring in, and your brain is like, oh, wait, Alex just called your name. You better give him an answer.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess it's really difficult. You know, you just imagine, well, it's just trivia. No, there's the buzzer, there's the lights, there's ignoring the studio audience. Yeah, I think I have a newfound respect. And my desire to make fun of someone for missing a clue is if it's not at 0, it's very close to 0 and heading in a negative direction.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the Pokemon thing. Now I just kind of go, well, you know, when I see those happen.
Yep. One comment I've got from former contestant Ben Wiles, he said, one thing that would help is a visible countdown timer of some sort. As an example, if he figures out Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band late and knows he only has 6 seconds to get something down, maybe you take a chance that just Sgt. Pepper's or Sgt. Pepper would be acceptable.
You know, actually, because that is the biggest thing, I did not hear the think music at all. I was so deep in my own thoughts, kicking myself for not remembering or whatever. That 30 seconds went by. I don't remember hearing the music. So, yeah, if there was some visual, a clock even, you know, with just like a 30-second clock,
yeah,
something that I would know how much time I had left because, but once again, to be perfectly clear for me, it never even occurred to me to just write Sgt. Pepper. So, you know, that was not, I almost instinctively, no matter what the judges are saying on the Jeopardy website now, I almost instinctively knew I'd be in as much trouble potentially with just Sgt. Pepper, you know, because granted, it's one of those weird things. No one ever says Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. We all know it as Sgt. Pepper's.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I wasn't going to take a chance in Final Jeopardy. I just knew in my gut that it had to be the entire album title.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt kind of, you know, reading the judge's explanation on the Jeopardy page, I was kind of, why didn't you just leave it alone and say, we wanted 8 words, he only gave us 6. Don't talk about my intent. Don't talk about whether or not Sgt. Pepper was an acceptable answer. I didn't write just Sgt. Pepper. So that's a moot point. Mm-hmm. My intent, given the category, given the clue, everyone knew what I intended to write. Once again, intent doesn't matter. What matters is it's an 8-word title. I only wrote 6.
Yep.
So I was more annoyed with how they explained the ruling than the ruling. And ironically, I was sitting in the audience watching the day after taping, and Alex explained it perfectly at the beginning of the show. He said, Wilbur ran out of time. He didn't give us, that was all they had to say. Leave it at that. And so, yes, some type of clock to go with it, just for the contestants, because I know I didn't hear the music at all. So,
and I think that's certainly very interesting, and I think that's a great idea for sure. That maybe they should put in some sort of clock for Final Jeopardy, just to give the contestants a some sort of visual idea, if some sort of visual. Yeah.
Yep.
So, moving on a little bit, certainly Marcus Gresham, he certainly ended your week as champion. Obviously, I'm guessing his collection of Hawaiian shirts got the attention of you guys.
You know, I don't know if anybody said anything about them in the green room, but I remember, you know, most of us are in ties and suit jackets, and here's Marcus in his shirts, and I'm just like, okay. That's all I could say. And it was a pleasure to watch him on the show. It's been a pleasure to kind of watch the memes that have surfaced around his Hawaiian shirt collection. Um, I was really fortunate. The van ride to the studio that morning, everyone in that van, they were talkative. We had a good time. So when to see Marcus on the show, to see him win, it was really gratifying, because I'm like, you go, Marcus. Man, I should have worn an Hawaiian shirt. I mean, here I am with a tie on. I should have gone for something else. So, but yeah, no, I was happy to see him win. It was like, yay.
That's great. So did you have any watch parties for the episode?
There were watch parties swirling around me. I watched it alone, and once again, partially because I knew how it ended, and I didn't know how people would react to the ending. I didn't know how I would react to seeing the ending again. So people kept saying, "Wilbur, you've got to come over. We got to watch it." And I said, "Nah, you guys go ahead. I'm gonna sit at home. I'm gonna live comment on Facebook. You guys can follow along with that." I posted a little video right before it aired on Facebook. But beyond that, I had a couple of beers. I sat and I watched it by myself, and I went, it wasn't that bad. Maybe I should have gone out tonight and watched it with other people. Just not remember only remembering how Final Jeopardy ended. I was just like, I think I'm gonna watch this alone, because I don't know what I'm gonna look like on television. So
Yeah, and I think a lot of people who didn't win have similar, certainly have similar thoughts about that. A lot of the people are worried about that sort of thing, and want to watch it alone, or some people even don't. Some people even were so didn't like the experience enough that they don't even watch the episode.
right,
So
right. Oh, my daughter loves seeing me on television. She was watching the screen, and she was, during that first part where I was the deer in the headlights and I didn't speak. She's like, "Daddy," and so finally, when I spoke, she went, "Yay! Speak to me, Daddy!" So it was a really sweet little moment.
So, do you remember what Alex talked with you guys about after your game up on stage there when he comes over to the lecterns, or again?
Well, I remember right after, it's in the cutaway where they do the promotional sponsors. I was asking him, because I was curious. I really was curious the day of the taping. I said, "So if I had just written Sergeant Pepper, would that have been acceptable?" And Alex was like, "Oh, I don't know." Then he kept going down the line talking to everybody else. So when he finally came back, and it's all three of us talking, I honestly don't remember what it was. I remember gesturing to my head. I think I might have been explaining how I spaced out during Final Jeopardy, but beyond that, I don't know what else was said. So
Okay. So when you went out to taping, did you do anything else tourist-wise when you were out in the LA area?
unfortunately, I did not. I should have done more. I mean, I walked around Culver City, which isn't much to see by the hotel, but I tried to be as low key as possible. I got there Sunday night. I knew we were taping on Tuesday, so I had Monday. I just kind of dozed all day, read some articles on the iPad, whatever. And then Wednesday, the day after, I just pretty much, well, the Tuesday night of taping, I might have had one or two beverages in the hotel bar with Eric, one of the other contestants, and we sat and we talked about the game, about work, whatever. So Wednesday I might have been just a little bit incapacitated. So
Okay.
it was, but no, it would have been nice. I flew out by myself, and if given a choice between watching television and touristing by myself, I'll always take television. I always need the other people to drag me out. So I ended up not taking advantage of the trip to go anywhere like I probably should have done.
I mean, that's also a, very much an individual thing as well. You don't want to, overextend yourself, as it were,
Right.
on, the day before taping and, be like, oh, I'm now
Tired. I'm
way too
oh,
tired.
yeah.
And
Oh yeah, and I knew we were at the studio at 7:30 in the morning, so I was up by 5:30, 5 o'clock, 5:30 because I couldn't sleep. So yeah, the day before the taping, there was just no way I was going to do anything other than breathe.
mm-hmm. That makes sense. And, whatever works for, you. And so whatever works best for you is certainly the thing to do before a taping. So,
Right.
So was there anything you thought I might bring up tonight, but didn't?
Actually, no, I figured I knew we were going to talk about Final Jeopardy. Beyond that, I think wow, hold on. I have to process that question first.
Or anything you'd like to ask of me as well.
So how did your audition go?
How did my audition go? Well, I think the biggest part of it was that Alex Trebek actually showed up and did a Q&A.
Was that in Houston? Was it that one?
No, this was in Toronto. He showed up in Toronto to do a because he was getting the Order of Canada.
Oh, nice.
2 days after my audition. So he came up and surprisingly stopped in to do a to meet the auditioners in Toronto and do a Q&A there and a couple of interviews. As it turns out, he happened to randomly show up in Houston like this past week too. But
because he had to reschedule theirs. You're lucky. We only got him on video, on a pre-recorded during our audition. You're lucky.
It's funny because we also got that pre-recorded thing being like, well, I'm sorry I can't be here. And I had been tipped off from a friend who had auditioned the previous day that Alex had shown up the previous day. And I kind of chuckled to myself and I'm like, really, Alex, you're not going to be here, eh? And then after the test, the contestant coordinators are out marking, and I guess him and Rocky Schmidt walked in, and of course our backs are to the
Right.
door, and someone says in this meek little voice, "Am I too late for the test?" And we turn around and we realize that this person who's just been like, "Am I too late for the test?" is Alex Trebek.
Nice.
And so he did a Q&A for about 15 or 20 minutes. And so that was really nice. And yeah, the audition, it's been my third audition. So it went, I thought it went pretty well. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. The test I thought went well. And then we got called up 3 at a time and,
to play the game.
To play the game and do the interview. I wish it's funny. Basically, there were 22 people in our room. I think 22 sounded about right, and there were I was in the first group up. The one person who goes before me talks about almost exactly what I would have talked about for what do you want to do with the money.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go with I decided I wasn't going to be like me too and go to my second choice, figuring that there might be 3 or 4 people behind me who would also want to do the same thing.
Yep.
And as it turns out, we were the only 2 people in the entire audition who wanted to do that sort of similar thing with the money. So,
wow. Okay.
But no, I went to that was the only thing that kind of was a little bit disappointing, was that I couldn't, give my first choice story, as it were. But
yeah,
I had a second choice story planned anyway. So
yeah, during the audition, Maggie stumped me when she asked me, and I was like, "What do you mean?" it's such a weird one. It was such a weird question to answer. I mean, and Maggie and I got into a little banter. She's like, you've won 40 times and you only have it's like, wait a second, I've won 40 times and I only have $100,000. Come on, what kind of craziness is this? She said, well, you bet conservatively. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I guess if that's all the money I have, I'll give it to my daughter for college or something. So it ended up being a weird moment, but a great day. So how was Alex during your Q&A?
He was
jovial?
Pardon me, sorry?
Was he jovial?
Oh, very jovial. He was, he was really funny. He opened up quite a bit about a couple things, like he actually got a chance to talk a little bit, obviously being up in Canada. He told us some great hockey stories because apparently at one point a few years back he was many years back he would be on celebrity hockey teams, as it were, going around sometimes and playing against retired NHL teams, in the sort of, charity games. You'll have a team of retired NHLers versus, a team of celebrities. And, he spoke a little bit fondly of being able to play hockey against, some old NHLers like Gordie Howe and Ted Lindsay. And
I vaguely remember him kind of having a conversation with someone the day of taping. I don't remember if it was a part where he was talking to the audience, but he was talking about playing hockey and missing skating. I think he had some problem with one of his legs or a knee or something.
He had knee surgery a couple of years ago.
And he said he didn't skate nearly as much or at all, if I remember correctly, because of the knee. But I was only kind of half listening because I don't remember why I was only half listening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know that the friends who came to the taping couldn't figure out, his kind of interaction with the audience during the taping, because he talks to the audience a lot.
Yeah.
He'll do any re-records that he has to do of clues, and then he'll spend the rest of the time talking to the audience or talking to the contestants. And my friends were like, is he being mean or is he being funny? And I was like, I don't know. I thought he was funny, but if you guys thought it was mean, I mean, perception, right? So
I mean, from my experience, a lot of hosts don't, a lot of those hosts don't do much of a Q&A at all.
Right.
So I think, Alex, the way he explained this a little bit, he's like, I make sure I want to do that Q&A with the audience because they, his thought is that if they've come out to see a taping, they're obviously fans of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, he wants to respect the fact that, they've because they're Jeopardy fans, and this could be the only chance they ever get a chance to, hear Alex Trebek take questions or see Alex Trebek, that they want that experience to be a good one.
Right. And so that's how I felt. That's how I interpreted it. But there was one point where he fan asked a question and said, look, I'm tired of you asking that question, and I heard it as a joke because the fan hadn't asked the question yet. I mean, and obviously he couldn't be. So I heard him doing stage patter, and my friend is like, that was kind of mean. I'm like, but I don't think he. So that it's always interesting. And I know the one thing he said to me, I was standing at the podium in between. He was walking past me and went, Wilbur, I have a dog named Wilbur. And he just kept walking. And I'm like, that's kind of. I'm not sure if I should laugh or if he just like punched me, I'm not sure which one it was because he did it straight faced and he kept going. And I'm like, haha, that was a good one, Alex. So overall, probably the best experience, second best experience of my life, my daughter's birth. And now my daughter's going to see this someday and she's going to yell at me for having to think twice about which one it was. Wonderful. So just everything about that day, the audition process. Well, only there's one thing I would change if I could, but beyond that one thing, the rest of it was awesome.
Well, um, in that case, I mean, that's certainly, I absolutely love when I hear contestants, glow about how well, even though, the result might not have been what they were hoping for, that they
Mhm.
still had an excellent time. And I'm sure that if when the if and when the contestant staff ever hears that from people, that they feel excellent about that, because obviously that means they've done their jobs.
Yeah,
And
they really do work hard. And they all gave me a hug when I came off stage. Maggie, Lori, they were all like, we knew you'd play the game well, Maggie said to me, which is why we got you out here from your audition. Wish it could have gone better. And she gave me a big hug. And I was just like, it wasn't like, here, come sign some paperwork, get out the door or stay. We don't care. It really felt like, and God knows how long they've all been doing it too, and they can still generate that type of connection to the contestants. I I every now and then I think I've heard a couple of people, or someone's told me that a couple of people have had bad experiences. I do feel sorry for those people, because you know there's just nothing about the day that left a bad taste in my mouth. So
now, along that point, I'm just thinking of something here. What
Mhm.
were your expectations going in?
You mean to the taping or the whole thing?
The to the taping. What were your expectations showing up that morning to the studio?
I had no clue what to expect. Once we got in, I knew there was going to be paperwork. I knew that, we'd rehearse. I mean, I had the general outline.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know what I was expecting. I hope to play well on the
Yep.
show. Um, my joke going into it was, boy, I hope I don't pull a Cliff Clavin, thinking back
Hmm.
to the old Cheers episode.
Yep.
But beyond that, I really hadn't thought. I really tried not to think too much into the future about it.
Well, I think that's also might be a good thing for people to realize as well, in terms of expectations, because you mentioned that there were people who didn't felt they had a bad experience, and I wonder if those people might have gone in expecting too much out of themselves.
Maybe. And that is possible. It got to the. I think Lori, one of the other contestant coordinators, said, "Well, we take lunch between shows 3 and 4." But if you're not a contestant anymore, you don't get to have lunch with us. And so, sitting in the green room, everybody there said, well, I have a new goal today. I want to make it to lunch. And of course, I get picked for game 2, so I still don't make it to lunch.
Yeah.
But it was just spur of the moment. It's like, I'm having fun, everybody else is making jokes. I want to make it to lunch. I don't care about winning, I just want lunch. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I was just really fortunate to be with the group of people I was, but there was nobody in that room who couldn't laugh, who didn't have a good time, who, you know, went for the donuts. Hey, there's a box of donuts over here. Are you gonna have a donut? Are you gonna have a donut?
Yeah.
Just kind of, I don't know. So yeah, like I said, I wish the ending could have been better, but there was nothing. There was and I think it might have been because I wasn't expecting too much. I mean, I was just amazed, walking out of the audition, they said, well, it could be any time in the next 18 months that we call you. Right. I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna get a call. And then I get a call. So it was like, ooh, I might actually, no, no, keep it here. That kind of thing.
Yep.
So yeah, yeah, I can't think of I can't really think of what I hoped would happen. It would have been nice to win, but I had fun.
Yep. And 3/4 of the people who go in there on average leave without having won a game.
Yep. And they said you're a bronze medalist. Even if you come in third place, you just won the bronze medal. How many people even get to that point? I'm like, okay, I think I can live with that notion. So, yeah.
Okay. So was there anything else you thought I would bring up tonight, or any further questions you may have for me?
We've had a nice long talk here.
We have had a nice long talk, and I've quite enjoyed this talk. And
I have too.
yeah, so I'm just gonna check. It doesn't look like no, there's nothing else on the hashtag right now. So Wilbur, I'd like to thank you very much for joining me on hashtag Jeopardy Live panel this evening.
So hey, Andy, can I do one thing?
Sure.
My daughter, I don't know if you can edit this, but my daughter has a YouTube channel of her little videos. Can I plug it?
Oh, go right ahead. Yes.
It's Adventurous Ava on YouTube. Look for it.
Adventurous, and how do you spell the
Ava? Oh, Adventurous is just adventurous, and
Yep.
Ava, AVA.
Okay.
Look for it. Boy, I hope I got that right. Once again, that'll be one of those things. I'm in the nursing home. She'll be like, why you're here. So.
Okay, so that's Adventurous Ava, AVA, and so
AVA.
that's your daughter's YouTube channel. So
Yeah.
I'm sure she'll appreciate the plug. So
I hope she does. We've got to get her college fund going. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining me on hashtag Jeopardy Live panel this evening, Wilbur. And
thank you, Andy, for having me.
And for the rest of you, thanks for tuning in to us tonight. We'll be back to our regular Mondays next week. Unfortunately, I personally have some other engagements, which means I could not tape tomorrow night. But for Wilbur, I'm Andy Saunders. Thank you very much for tuning in to hashtag Jeopardy Live panel this evening. Have a great night.